The young people seen here, dressed in their matching red windbreakers, are Uyghurs, one of China's largest ethnic minorities. This video, posted online by the local Kashgar government, appears to feature a joyous farewell ceremony, complete with dancers, musicians, and colorful banners. But it's actually part of a vast labor transfer program run by the Chinese state, in which Uyghur men and women are forcibly sent to work in major industries across the country, sometimes thousands of miles from their homes. According to the Chinese government, the goal of its labor transfer program is poverty alleviation. It says the Uyghurs are grateful for the opportunity to be employed. But the program is actually part of a deliberate state-run effort to displace and decentralize Xinjiang's Muslim minorities, a strategy of control and assimilation designed to eliminate Uyghur culture. Since the early 2000s, the Chinese government has subjected the Uyghurs to severe human rights abuses, among them mass internment and forced labor. As details of China's treatment of its Muslim minorities have become public in recent years, it has provoked worldwide outrage. In response, the United States signed into law the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act in 2021, which declares that all imports produced by workers from Xinjiang are presumed to have involved state-imposed forced labor, and as such, are banned. The act also bans goods that have been produced using the labor of Uyghur and other Muslim minority workers whom the government has transferred out of Xinjiang. Since then, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol has seized more than $1 billion of goods connected to Xinjiang, including electronics, clothing, and pharmaceuticals. But there's one major Chinese industry whose reliance on forced Uyghur labor has until now escaped notice: seafood. In early 2023, our team of investigators found compelling evidence that Uyghurs are not only being forced to work in seafood processing plants thousands of miles from their homeland, but that the products they produce are still making their way onto dinner tables across the globe. China is home to over 56 officially recognized ethnic groups spread across its 33 administrative regions. Over 90% of the population is made up of Han Chinese, concentrated predominantly in major cities in the country's east. But more than half the population of Xinjiang, a landlocked province in western China, is made up of minorities, including Uyghur, Kyrgyz, Tajiks, Kazakhs, Hui, and Mongols. Located along the ancient Silk Road trade route, Uyghurs here trace their roots to a time between the 9th and 13th centuries and view themselves as the region's indigenous population.
Uyghurs are a primarily Muslim ethnic group that primarily reside in Xinjiang province in northwestern China. The Uyghurs are united by a common language and share a culture of music, dance, food, and other elements that distinguish them from the rest of mainland China.
Since 1949, when Mao Zedong's army took control of the region, Han Chinese have been steadily migrating into Xinjiang with the encouragement of the communist government, weakening the Uyghur majority in the region, which has led to escalating tensions between the two ethnicities. Over the last 2 decades, a series of violent incidents have destabilized the region. This has threatened Chinese President Xi Jinping's vision for a unified China. In response, China ramped up a broad program of persecution under which predominantly Muslim minorities in China could be detained for months or years for acts such as reciting a verse of the Quran at a funeral or growing a long beard. Xinjiang was transformed into a testing ground for digital surveillance. Facial recognition software, electronic ID cards, an untold number of surveillance cameras, even the collection of biometric data like DNA, was used against the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities.
What was calculated a couple of years ago was that the Chinese government had built enough detention facilities to simultaneously hold 1 million adult Uyghurs.
The official narrative from the Chinese government was that detainees were being taken to re-education and vocational training centers. But former detainees have reported being subjected to torture, beatings, and forced sterilization during their detention.
We've seen statistics and research that a quarter of the adult population of some of the areas of southern Xinjiang could be housed in local detention centers at any given time.
In 2019, amid mounting international pressure, the Chinese government made a surprise announcement to the world.
教培学员已经全部结业。在政府的帮助下，实现了稳定就业，改善了生活质量，走上了幸福生活。
Something did begin to change in 2019, which is that more and more Uyghurs were being transferred to work instead of housed in internment camps. But this wasn't by choice. Uyghur people and other minority groups were given a false option. You know, you can go work in Shandong 3,000 miles away or wherever else, thousands of miles away. But if they say no, they're moved back to the internment camps.
The fact of it is, yes, people might have jobs, but can they say no to those jobs? Can they refuse to be sent to places that they're being sent to? Can they ask to be kept with their family? It's forced labour if you can't refuse that. If you're at risk of being put in a detention facility, if your family are at risk of being arrested because of your refusal, then that's not free. That's not free labour, that is forced labour.
Between 2014 and 2019, according to government statistics, Chinese authorities annually relocated more than 10% of Xinjiang's population, or 2.5 million people, through labor transfers. The effect has been enormous. Between 2017 and 2019, according to the United Nations, birth rates in Xinjiang declined by almost half. The passing of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act in the US has had a major impact on some industries.
The goods that have been most affected by this ban thus far include electronics, apparel and textiles, and certain agricultural products like tomatoes. However, as we've conducted more research into these forced labor transfers to other provinces across the country, it's become quite apparent that seafood processing facilities have been significant recipient of Uyghur labor as a way to fill employment gaps or labor shortages, in part caused by COVID.
I think the reason that seafood has escaped international attention is primarily because the labor transfers out of Xinjiang into the seafood processing sector, according to our investigation at least, have only occurred in a single Chinese province, and that is the province of Shandong.
So we focused on Shandong province, where we identified a number of processing facilities that were using forced labour. One of those plants was a place called the Anti-Sanko Fisheries. It exported, thousands upon thousands of tons of fish and seafood to the US since the law came into force.
Foreign journalists are generally forbidden from reporting in Xinjiang. So the team of investigators had to rely on a range of publicly available materials, including company newsletters, local news reports, trade data, satellite imagery, and social media.
But the real kind of key of our investigation became the use of the Chinese version of TikTok, which is called Douyin. Douyin was a really powerful source because it gave us a visual insight into the plants and into how the process worked. So you'd have a Douyin account of a Uyghur person posting videos from Xinjiang one week. Next week he's at a train station. And then, of course, videos from the factory, from within their dormitories.
We initially identified one Uyghur who was uploading videos to Douyin, the Chinese TikTok. And from that one individual, we conducted a social network analysis to identify other Uyghur users who were also working in Shandong and posting from seafood processing facilities.
By finding that first Uyghur worker, we were able to build a pretty substantial network of Douyin accounts that showed Uyghurs working in a number of different facilities: Yantai Sanko, Shandong Beijia, a company called the Qishan Group, a company called Qingdao Tianyuan, list goes on. We were able to build a pretty clear picture of what was going on, of how the labour transfers were put into effect. We even had footage from planes, trains and so on that were transferring the Uyghurs from Xinjiang to Shandong.
Videos posted by Uyghurs from seafood plants show that many live in military-style dormitories under the watch of security personnel. Uyghur workers' dorms are often searched, and if a Quran or other contraband is found, the owner may be sent to a re-education camp. Uyghurs' social media posts are also closely monitored by Chinese online censors. Posting anything critical of the regime could quickly land them in a detention center. But it appears that many Uyghurs have found a way to include cryptic messages in their videos to convey their suffering, while also bypassing the Chinese censors.
I was watching a video of a man cutting a whitefish on a processing line. And the music that he had uploaded to that video, it was powerfully full of sorrow. And at the end of the video, it cut to an image of a young girl who I presumed, was this man's daughter after reviewing some of his other videos. And it was at this time that I first thought maybe some of these videos are trying to tell us something.
Hayattaki en çok lezzet, ilgili seni ezgen, hakaretligen, kemsitken, ornumuz koygan, hem senin neticesi küçük boğan, düşmeni yenmektir.
Thousands of tons of seafood processed in China with forced labor continue to enter the United States and Europe. Importers sent their products to major supermarkets around the world, including Walmart, Kroger, Tesco, and Carrefour. The importers also sent seafood to Cisco, the global food service giant that supplies more than 400,000 restaurants in the US alone. Over the past 5 years, the US government spent more than $200 million to buy seafood from importers linked to Uyghur labor for use in military bases, federal prisons, and public schools.
I don't know what impact the reporting might have. I think the most powerful thing that could happen for Uyghur people is for conditions to change within China. The companies in China, they are not breaking the law in China. you know, and we've spoken to many of them where we found Uyghur labour in their plant, and, you know, they've been quite clear on that as far as Chinese law is concerned, they're not breaking the law. They're actually all compliant with the law. So in these cases, I suppose it falls to their international customers to say, well, that's not acceptable to us. It's not enough that you say Chinese law is fine with all of this. It's not okay for us that our goods that are coming through your factory are actually being produced by people in forced labour conditions.